coaches? Because this is what got us in trouble.
So you should use whatever you actually use. If you guys use, so if you are a council that uses exclusively external coaching, before you send an MOU, you should do this switch. Okay? So let me see here. And this just made up. Let's double check.
I'll send you this.
And so like I was saying before, you're not allowed to send an MOU or actively allowed to do a transfer unless you have an approved MOU. And similarly, if you ever look at the actions on a requisition, it's very different based on what the status is. And so for instance, this switch is only available on preliminary. So I'm going to check a few things here. So basically when you do the switch or the conversion, well actually, so just the switch, there are a few criteria. One, it has to be preliminary. Two, there can be no coaching details or transfers. Okay, so you can't have used this. So basically this is going to like switch the preliminary balance and change the assignment type, which is different from moving the remaining balance. Because basically this coaching detail is already billed as an external coaching event. And similarly, any transfer isn't going to be associated with the internal coaching requisition, pool requisition rather. It's going to be associated with the external, or I think I got that mixed up, but yeah. So let's see, so I'm going to delete these really quick.
So we do this before we send the MOU
Correct.
to the provider.
And so, it will be possible to fix that after the fact, but it will be messy, and it's not easy guys want to use.
So we want to make intentional decisions up front.
But if we have already made a mistake and done that, can we just send in a support ticket?
Send in a support
Yeah,
ticket.
that's what I
Easy.
see. Okay.
Okay, cool. So here we are. We have a preliminary internal coaching requisition, and it has used, where is the utilized? There we go. So it has $0 utilized. So this is eligible to use the switch action. And so you can see, we go down to actions. We have a few things, and one of them is switch between internal and external coaching types. So I click that. You can see there's, usually when you click on these actions, it asks you to, give a justification. But in this case, this isn't a transfer. This is actually keeping the same record, and it's just updating the assignment type and the preliminary balance. And so one thing you may have noticed is that with external coaching, it's actually not stored as hours, it's stored as dollars. And that's based on, let's see, the external coaching rate, which is defined up here. So in this case, my funding stream has a $100 external coaching. So if you look down here, we have 20 preliminary hours. So when I hit save, I should expect to see $2,000 of external preliminary dollars. So let's see, success. This internal coaching requisition is now an external coaching requisition. We can see the assignment type is external coaching, and sure enough, $2,000 preliminary. And say you did that by accident, you don't goof, go back to actions, switch between internal and external. Again, nothing else to do. Hit save. Success.
But this can only be done before we send the MOU.
Correct. So let's see here. So I'm going to send an MOU.
So one, send me the and now it's too late.
Yep. And so as soon as this says hooray, we'll just send the MOU. I'm going to just refresh this. And so you can see the status is no longer preliminary, it's now approved, pending MOU. And so once this is actually approved, and we don't recommend that you use this action unless it's a very specific case. So now this isn't approved. And so you can see split into two is the other one, but why don't we show what happens here? So this will have a picture. So let's say we want to split out 10, and so we're saying
Back to internal.
So right, so you don't actually have to specify it because it's, well actually you do. So you say, and the code is actually pretty clever. It will look at your applications, so as long as this requisition is associated with an application. So what I should find is that I hit external coaching, and this assign new requisition to, this is actually optional. And so if there is an existing external requisition, it doesn't create a new one, it'll just move those funds over. And so let's just say this is a test, so $10 to transfer to external coaching, don't care about the new user, gave a justification, and the action is split into 2 coaching requisitions. I hit save. Open up this real quick. Oh, so I guess it wasn't as clever as I thought it was. I need to look at that.
Your requisition doesn't have sufficient.
Yeah, but so, oh, actually I know exactly why I did that. It's because it was not approved. So if you look at the external coaching requisition, it's approved pending MOU, which isn't the same as approved. And so when it tried to transfer, it was like, no dice.
We don't have a signed MOU yet.
Exactly. So you can't transfer it to anything unless it's approved.
So we can't do that, is what you're saying. We can't.
No, you can. I was kind of going out of
It won't be approved yet because if we're sending it to OEC, we're gonna have the same problem.
I'm sorry, can you rephrase the question?
So since this is exactly what will end up happening to us, we'll try to change before we send the MOU and it hasn't been approved.
So you don't want to use what I just did. You want to use the thing that I did before,
Okay.
which was the switch assignment,
Right.
which isn't a transfer.
Okay.
Right?
And when it's in preliminary.
Right, when it's in preliminary, that's the important.
Yeah, and so, so if you are a council that uses exclusively external coaching, then this should be just like drilled into your brain. Like, don't approve an MOU. And the other nice thing, if you guys aren't familiar with this is the application record. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, these are all the requisitions that are associated with this application. And so you can see super easily, like there's a dollar, there's an internal, and there's an external requisition here. And so if you're, about to send out an MOU.
So it will preload before, when it's in preliminary, it will preload the coaching internal hours?
So by default, all requisitions that are created through the application process are internal.
And it
so
will
if you
load.
want them to be, so when if your council just does external, and you get a new application for Bill's Child Care Test, you should open up the application, scroll down to the bottom, and look here.
Yeah, so that's what you're saying. It does preload, as soon as a person turns in an application, Sugar will preload the internal coaching and the RTTQI dollars.
Correct.
And we're assuming that can we assume that they're correct or no? Because before we couldn't assume it.
The balances are correct. The issue was basically that there was kind of a legacy formula that didn't really apply, and there was some kind of miscommunication from the support team about what the actual formula was.
And is that the same for CCAP? For any coaching that we do, whether that's for CCAP QI or for school readiness or for RTT, it's all the same.
Yep. So we, my development team, we create these formulas in the portal, and basically when you apply for any of these funding streams, it checks the program abbreviation, and it says, this is an RTT formula application. We're going to look at the RTT formula. We see how many classrooms they have. We see what rating they are. We look at the matrix, and we figure out if they deserve $2,000 of coaching. Yes.
But isn't there a timing issue too? If they apply for RTT first, then they might get a different amount if they've applied for other QI.
So that's exactly right, and that's the piece that a lot of people were missing. So
Say that again? What was that? What was missing?
oh, nothing. Don't worry about So basically, 2 years ago, when we were first setting up the original RTT funding stream, there was this concept of a asset strategy. And so the idea was that, I believe it was that if someone was applying to all of the funding streams, that we didn't want to give them like all of the RTT funding, like money, because they already are getting a lot of funding from other sources. And so as a result, we were decreasing the amount that was given out by RTT. But this became more complicated down the line when people, ended up being a 2-year funding stream, so people had already applied for RTT first, but then they were applying for CCAP a second time, and it kind of like got a little bit out of whack, and a lot of people got confused and they didn't quite understand it. But the long and short of it is that there's really 2 formulas, and it's dependent on if you apply for RTT first or after the fact. Does that make sense? Like if you apply to other funding streams before you apply for RTT. Okay.
But we can trust the formulas in there now.
Oh, you can trust me. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think if you see something like in right race to the top that's like $2,000, you guys know that the highest amount for any center is $1,500, right?
I don't think we know that. I think that I have a real hard time in translating that still in that formula. And I'm wondering if there couldn't be something created easier so we can check that. So that it can say scenario 1 without all the boxes and without having to read the correct line across. Do you know what I'm talking about? Because it's really difficult to understand. I would love something just much more clear, just to make sure. Because you had to spend a lot of time with me to help me get to it.
But I like that.
Yes.
But isn't it, that's based on application, that doesn't mean they're accepted into all of those programs, because it's based on funding source.
Which is,
So then
also
how do
true.
you adjust that, if you're trusting those formulas?
and that's assuming they're gonna get whatever the allocations were.
Right.
No, I'm with you. I was not in love with that.
Because we have some that apply for 4,
Yep.
but
So
they get
that's
denied.
So the other side of it is that, generally speaking, if someone's able to see the application in the portal, that means they're eligible, and there's very few cases where people don't get accepted. The one case would be if they apply late and there's not sufficient funding.
Or if you're in a community and you see a program that is eligible for 3 funding streams, but why give that one provider all those dollars when they had a lot of stuff and a lot of support going? So you might want to spread that well and wait list them and give it to another
We didn't stack
program.
ours, we tried to get them in one, not all.
Sure. No, I completely understand. And, I think next year we'll be certainly keeping that in mind when we're crafting those formulas.
Okay.
And then back to formulas. So way back when, or I know for us, the classroom, so when they created the formulas, there was the different data points you use. The one was classrooms. Is that still coming from Salesforce from what the provider puts in there?
Not from what they put, so it depends on what you mean by what they put in there.
Well,
So
'cause-
we sync over our data from Salesforce, so if there's a classroom record,
So do we trust that they did it right?
sorry?
Before, we couldn't trust that the classrooms
Were entered
were
correctly.
entered correctly, so the funding stream got messed up because they actually only had 1 classroom instead of 2. or whatever.
I see what you're saying, so you're talking about the issue where we were getting duplicate classrooms, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Or
okay,
just-
so that is no.
There were more than, there's like.
I know.
Yeah.
Duplicate
Multiple
is
ways that
perhaps
happens.
smaller than the actual case. So let me.
There's errors and then there's duplication.
So we should trust that the formula is correct, yeah, when it comes, when it gets through.
Yeah, so the formula is like static code, it's not going anywhere, it never gets touched, like nothing about that has changed. So, as long as the instructions were correct at last time, you can be sure that's correct. And I made the alphabet.
We've got about 2 minutes left. And there was one other question that Sherry posed earlier. And you were wondering about like making changes to MOUs prior to sending them because you were changing dollars or something?
And if the formulas are great, then we probably don't have to worry about it.
The MOUs, the universal ones gave ranges, they didn't say exactly what. So they either had to be notified some other way, or they could see it when they logged into EC Connect.
So if the sign MU came back, we needed to quickly make any changes before they logged into EC Connect to see.
That's
what they were-
exactly, if you were changing it, that's exactly right.
Wait,
You
what's
had
that?
to be quick.
So the formula?
So for those of us who wanted more programs to participate, but they were awarded large amount of money, so we were having to trigger MOUs, get the MOU back, change that amount so that we didn't zero out our budget, and then we eventually all got stuck in a place where you still couldn't do it anymore because it had awarded so much money.
So basically.
But anyway, the issue is not with the MOUs, it's with
The preliminary
It's
organization.
with making that quick adjustment
On
once the
requisition.
MOU is signed in the requisition.
So basically, this is definitely still true today, is that, our instruction from what we see was that the preliminary balances are a real thing. And that are a real thing. Like, that is what each site that's participating should be awarded.
But they
And
were
I
a real thing,
understand
they
that
were
there
very,
have been
really
some
incorrect.
bending on that, and that, some people may think that that's unreasonable, but like, that has been our, instructions. And so you still do have the ability to transfer, from the requisition after it's been approved to the pool. But you're right, like, it doesn't make it very easy to approve a new requisition that way. So that's something that we're looking into, but currently the advice is that we should just, acknowledge the reality of those preliminary balances. So I just want to real quick look at one of the questions that was raised earlier about the classrooms. So there's questions about like the duplicate classrooms, which was a very real issue for a while. And basically we looked at this course and realized that the problem was that QRIS applications, every time you got a new one, they were duplicating all of the existing classrooms and moving it over to the new PRIS application, and we were getting all of these classrooms, and they all looked like unique classrooms, and so we were getting, however many classrooms they had times the number of PRIS applications. But we figured that out, and we figured out how to track that, and so now if you look, this is my, test site in the classrooms, and you can see this is a legitimate active classroom. And then below these, you can see these are all associated with archive QRS applications. And so furthermore, you can see that there's a ton of them, but if we go up, so over here, you can see there were quite a few more than 2 classrooms, but 1 infant classroom and 1 toddler classroom.
And
Yes.
so what if the provider on the QRIS side
Made a mistake.
puts in too many, they don't understand, they put in too many classrooms or whatever?
Probably with family childcare, they
Yes.
describe the various parts of their home as classrooms. Because classrooms really is not a word that resonated with them. So they were trying
Yeah.
to segregate
Living
their
room and their
house
kitchen and
into
their
classrooms.
Or center providers that had morning and afternoon sessions and listed
Yes.
them as
Exactly.
different
Yes.
classrooms, and went
Instead
from
of
6
sessions.
classrooms to 12 classrooms.
Right. Even though when we coach them, we say it's a physical room that people move in and out.
Yeah.
But a classroom can also be a staff set, right?
So no, so a classroom is a physical space. A classroom session is a grouping of teachers and age groups in a specific classroom. So if you're getting a new teacher in the room, then that could be considered a new classroom session. But it's still the same physical room, so that is one classroom.
So is there a cross check to make sure that in QRIS they put it in right? other than us going in and helping them?
So the licensing specialists will go in to approve the level 2s, and they should be checking that because they're gonna look at the workforce and make sure there are enough staff members for the amount of children. And so usually they can catch that.
Okay, since I've noticed ours have not.
Guys, let's wrap it up. It's break
Yeah,
time.
with the
Session
evaluation
break.
form, if you wouldn't mind filling it out, and I think if you have questions that didn't get answered, it would be good to put them on there, because we'll at least capture them for the next time around.
So we're gonna collect these.
You have the survey, right?